Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another incredible guest, man. I love talking to people in this career field because I always learn a ton about myself and the different ways. And it's kind of interesting as I progress through this career field, the questions get more and more specific. And that's really what this is about right now is the question. So today we're going to welcome Patrick Elsner, who's a leading franchise consultant. He brings over 20 years of experience in helping corporate executives and aspiring franchisee owners achieve their dreams. Okay, he has a proven process of successfully launching over 500 franchisees through his franchise matching service. And I think that's what's really incredible is the ability to take that many people through a successful people who enter the franchising stream. There's already a small amount of people who choose to go that route. Mostly in our experience on the podcast, just from lack of knowledge or understanding of what's out there. But to have that many people successful, that's a huge number. I wonder how many were not successful. Maybe he'll share that with us. But I think you've got to be good at asking the right questions to help people identify who they are and what they're doing. So Patrick, go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into this career field and why are you so passionate about it moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Sam, and thanks for having me on. So I had a career in advertising sales, and I sold a tremendous amount of television, radio, and newspaper advertising to a lot of small independent business owners, but I also sold to a lot of franchise owners. Now, I couldn't articulate back then when I was selling advertising what the appeal of franchising was. But what I understood was a lot of these small independent business owners didn't succeed because they lacked structure. They lacked training, support. They basically had no plan and no roadmap. The appeal to people in their 40s and 50s who come to me and they say, Patrick, I'm tired of working in corporate America. Part of the appeal for a franchise is they're given this sort of playbook, if you will. They give the roadmap and say, here's how you succeed as a business owner owning a franchise. And that's really what has drawn me to franchising. I'm a big believer in having a system. I'm a big believer in having that structure. And that's what franchising really gives to those corporate America executives that I place in franchise ownership.
See, that's incredible. So I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think it's funny. What the note I wrote down was systems win championships. And, it's so funny. A good system, you can advertise. You can say, look, here's our system. But even though you know our system, we're going to run our system so well that you can't defeat it. Right? In sports, they watch game film, they watch and watch and watch and watch, and they basically know everybody's playbook for the most part. There's maybe some little options that haven't been used in a while, so they don't know them all. And there's obviously audibles as far as once you actually are on the field, you have to make some adjustments. But as a general rule, everybody could know everybody else's playbook. And still, if that team is so good at running it, then it doesn't matter. And I think that you see that in business. Go back to maybe when you were growing up, what was life like and what was your early household like? Did you have entrepreneurs, your parents? Were they corporate people? Like, what was the situation there?
Yeah. So I was the youngest of 10 kids, Sam. Can you imagine? In a nice Catholic family, 10 kids. I was the youngest. I always say they save the best for last, right?
Yeah. I'm the 7th of 11. So I actually can't imagine not being the youngest, but I can imagine being in that family. And it's a riot all the time.
Yeah, when we go out, you don't see families with this many kids anymore. But being the youngest of 10 kids, we didn't grow up in a very affluent area. And so if you wanted anything in my family, you had to get out and work for it. So literally at a young age, I would be out cleaning gutters, raking leaves. I would be out mowing lawns. Whenever it would snow, I wouldn't see white, I would see green, because I knew that that was an opportunity for me to make money. And I think all the members of my family, with the exception of a couple, are business owners or they're self-employed. I think in part because of the fact that, my dad was in real estate and he was very entrepreneurial. And so I think that is definitely ingrained in me. I also read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And immediately it clicked for me that there are two types of dads. There's a rich dad who's the entrepreneur, and then there's the poor dad, which basically I knew I didn't want that to be my path. And that's why I became a franchise consultant 20 years ago, to help others at least explore the idea of franchise ownership.
Yeah, that's it's so funny. I was very similar to you. I remember, we did just for a little stupid stuff, we would do lemonade stands all the time. And we were up on a busy road, but it wasn't until I was 6 years old. When I was 6, I really wanted to play soccer. And the only way for me to get to play soccer was if I had bought cleats and paid the entry fee, which was like $50 then. And I went and asked my parents. They said, yeah, you can go earn it, So I pushed an old snapper lawnmower up and down our road and went and cut people's grass. And that didn't have a bag, so it shot grass right in my face the whole time, but it was worth it. And I got to play for, that was the start. I played for probably 10 years after that. No, not quite 10. It was probably 6 years, but I loved it. And I think that work ethic is important, and very similar to your family. Pretty much everybody in my family is an entrepreneur or business owner of some sort. And so it just breeds that into you. You mentioned you started franchise consulting maybe 20 years ago. What was a catalyst? Like, was there a specific experience that said, hey, you know what? I should learn more about this franchise consulting thing? Because there's one thing to be a franchisee, right? Build a business or work inside somebody else's structure to build a business. But what made you go the sales route of helping other people make that decision?
Yeah. So when my second daughter was about to be born back in 2003, I started thinking about business ownership. And one of the things that I realized, Sam, is I sold franchising, advertising all these franchise owners. I recognize that these people are no more smarter than me, but they just chose a different path. And so I started looking at franchises and business to own, and I ended up working with a guy that's a franchise consultant, believe it or not. And he and I worked together. I ended up taking over his practice. He has long since retired, and here I am 20 years later. But what really compelled me to join the franchise program is the infrastructure. Most people come to me and they say, well, Patrick, I don't have the business idea. Well, that's what franchising gives you. It's that business in a box. So you don't have to come up with the idea. You just have to know how to execute.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that skill alone is, for lack of a better word, significantly deficient in our society. The execution skill. And being the coachable as well. I mean, there's lots of people who they for lack of a better word, they've been liberated by whatever woke juice they're drinking, that they can be their own thing and they don't have to follow rules and buck the system and actually tear down every structure that was made. And that is a thought process and orientation that will not survive in the franchise world. Like, you cannot be bucking the system entirely. That doesn't mean, in my experience talking to other franchise consultants, how open, just while we're on this topic, how open are franchises to franchisee feedback to alter systems that maybe are out of touch or out of style with current economic circumstances?
Yeah. So let me explain the origin of the Filet-O-Fish at McDonald's. The franchise owner in Boston approached Ray Kroc and said, look, I got a lot of Catholics here in Boston during Lent that are not going to eat hamburgers on Fridays. I need to be able to sell a Filet-O-Fish sandwich on Fridays. And Ray, of course, initially said, no, you can't do that. That's not part of our model. Lo and behold, we know how the story, of course, ends. The Filet-O-Fish is one of the most popular menu items at McDonald's, not just on Fridays during Lent, but throughout the year. So you can have some level of input with a franchisor. The one thing you don't want to do is approach it from a position of being a maverick and saying, well, I know McDonald's doesn't sell sushi, but we're going to start selling sushi out of this McDonald's. It's never going to happen. You're going to get penalized by McDonald's corporate. The real creativity comes, that I found, is really on the marketing side. So let's say you own that McDonald's and maybe you want to do local promotions. There's no reason why you can't do that, Sam. You can certainly be creative in that respect. You just can't go changing fundamentals of the business model.
So let's move into that, the advertising side, because this is something that out of all the people I've talked to, nobody else has done or come up the same way you did. So with the advertising aspect, were you selling advertising to all businesses, or were you just selling it to franchisees, I guess, businesses that were franchised out, or were you selling it to just any business that you could find?
Yeah, no, I was working with independent businesses and franchise owners. For instance, I sold advertising to one of the most successful Stanley Steamer franchise owners. Happens to be a guy named Phil Dean here in St. Louis. But then I sold a lot to small business owners as well that were non-franchised.
And when you're selling advertising, what types of advertising are you selling, and how much of that advertising, I guess in my mind, just so you kind of gauge where I'm coming from, when I hear the term as a business owner, I am going to sell, or somebody's going to sell me advertising. What they're selling me, from my understanding, is space to advertise, like a billboard, like space in a magazine or in a newspaper or on TV or on the radio. So they're selling the space, but it's really up to me to determine what goes in that space. That's my interpretation. But I don't know if that's true. When you're selling advertising, how much of it was actually helping them come up with the advertisements versus just selling the space?
Yeah. So I sold for the NBC affiliate here in St. Louis, KSDK. And then after that, I sold for KMOX Radio and the St. Louis Cardinals radio network. So to answer your question about the content of the commercials, there are two approaches. If it's a national franchise brand, you're getting canned content from the franchisor parent. So if you think about those GMC ads that you see on TV that may be tagged with St. Louis area dealers, it's still being used now. And you're going to see the same commercial, whether you're in St. Louis, Detroit, Phoenix, it doesn't matter. Now, when it comes to a local independent business owner, Sam, those business owners typically need my organization, the NBC affiliate, for instance, to come up with the creative message for that ad. So we would go out and shoot TV commercials and create the content for those independent business owners. The franchise owners, this is part of the systems and infrastructure that you're paying for to get the content that ultimately you put on the TV or the radio.
Okay, great answer. I appreciate that. So now I want to maybe be more selfish with this question, okay? Because one of the things that I do is this podcast, and I love this podcast for many, many reasons. But one of the main reasons is I get to interview incredible people, business leaders from all over the world that help me in my business, right? That's one of the things I really love doing. The other thing I love doing is being able to share that conversation, the one that we're having, with anybody who chooses to listen to it. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing, but ultimately maybe I'm not directly selling because at this point in my podcast, I get a lot of offers. People are constantly offering to be on my podcast, or their PR agencies are offering for them rather. And so I'm picking and choosing who I'm going to have on. But once I've chosen somebody like yourself, and we did this for maybe 10, 15 minutes before we started, my goal is to, for lack of a better word, sell my guest, you, on showing up in a way that's going to both help you and me, right? So I'm at the end of the day, I'm still selling advertising, right? This is an hour-long advertisement for you, Patrick. Anybody who's listening, that's what it is. And it's a mentoring session as well. So I want to set this up as a host to do both. From your experience of selling advertising to business owners, you obviously went through, because I took you through what I do normally. So what are some things that I could improve on to help it be more effective for the listener and for the guest?
Specifically for your podcast or the content, or I'm not sure what you're asking.
So yeah, you just went through my experience of like how I onboarded you basically on the podcast. Obviously, I got your information from your PR person, but once we got on the call, I onboarded you onto, hey, this is what the show is. This is how it is. This is what we're looking for. So I'm now selling you the advertising spot. I imagine that if you're on the radio and you're selling a radio spot, you're going to sell that radio spot to GMC, whatever, different than you're going to sell, maybe not GMC because that's a corporate, so they already have their stuff canned. But if I'm talking about mom and pa bakery, okay, I'm going to sell a radio spot to that bakery different than I'm going to sell a TV spot. I'm going to talk about different features because TV, there's visual, radio, it's audio. So that sales pitch of how to help them see the value in being on the show is going to be different, I would presume, right? It's going to be a different pitch. So knowing that this is a podcast format and I'm very clear about what my objectives are, how could I do better at helping you get the most out of this experience? As the salesman person and the provider of the product, the podcast, how could I help you see more value and get the most out of the value that you're giving?
Yeah, I think the questions you're asking, Sam, are spot on. I think for the most part, and I listened to podcasts for years now, one of the things that I like about a podcast is it gives you a chance to expand on content. You know, if you're talking about a 30-second radio spot or a 60-second radio spot, there's only so much you can share. The benefit of the podcast is we can get beyond the headline. We can go into much deeper coverage. And I think the questions that you ask are really the key here. But it's not just the initial question, it's the follow-up question that comes. Because people will say, Patrick, here's my unique selling point about my particular business. And some people will take that at face value. Oftentimes they'll say, well, why is it that way? Why do you do your business this way? What's the evolution of your model? I want to dig deeper into that because I really, not only selfishly, because I'm oftentimes very curious about how businesses work, but there is something to be said about that. I want to know the why behind it.
Yeah, because I feel like once you know the why behind anything, it's way easier to refer to other people. It's way easier to say, hey, come listen to this. This is what you're going to get. Are you going to get the same thing every time? In certain areas, yes. In this podcast, no, you're not going to get the same thing every time, but the same objective from whoever we're talking about. You're going to identify what are the questions that kind of led somebody to that. And I love that your kind of origin story was you were already selling these services, and then you got hooked up with somebody and you thought, this is the question. And it wasn't even a question. It was a recognition of, I'll say fact, even though I don't know all these individuals, but like, I'm just as smart as this guy. I'm just running a different system, right? And that's got to be a level of, why am I not more successfully where I want to be? Or why am I living the life I'm living? I could be living a different life if I chose to do different things. And that's a universal question. That's not just a question regarding franchising, but that's like, okay, in my experience, most business owners, and you've probably met with a lot more business owners than me at this point, but most business owners are not any smarter than somebody who's not a business owner. In fact, some of them maybe are less smart, but they're, as we say in our industry, they're dumb enough to be coachable. They're dumb enough to execute without questioning. And that creates very, very, very successful individuals in a lot of areas of their life. So I'm curious, from your 500, that's so many. That's way more than anybody I've talked to, okay? So 500 successful franchisees. How do you identify if somebody's really coachable enough to be a good franchisee, or if they're just not, because some things they might seem good on the front side, but then a year in, 2 years in, their wife says, well, why don't you do this with the store? And they're like, yeah, why don't I do that with the store? And then they're off, they're done. So how do you find the people? Like, what are the questions you're asking them to help them identify if they'd be a good fit in the franchise type system, and then further which franchise is going to be best for them?
Yeah, here's what I would tell you, Sam. Franchising is definitely not perfect. It's not for everybody. What you have to be is self-aware. You have to understand, as a potential franchise owner, you have to understand your sort of state of the state, if you will. There's a book called Now Discover Your Strengths. He talks about in the book, you can't teach a rabbit to hop. Sorry, you can't teach a rabbit to swim. Can't teach a turtle to hop. And knowing your strengths is really the key here. Franchising is nothing more than following a system. If you're the type of person that says, yeah, but I don't think that people in Peoria, Illinois are going to like that type of fill in the blank, that immediately is a red flag to me and to a franchisor, by saying that this person is probably not going to be the best fit. I was just interviewing a gentleman from New Jersey earlier, and there were some things that he said that made me wonder if this guy is going to be a good franchise owner. And there are people that I've told them, Sam, I've said during the interview, I said, you know what, I wonder if you would make a good franchise owner. And they would immediately acknowledge and say, you know what, Patrick, you might be right. Maybe I'm not good for a franchise. It's sort of like getting furniture from IKEA. The great thing about that is you get the instructions. If you follow the instructions, chances are you're going to be able to build that piece of furniture. But if you don't, you're going to have all sorts of problems, maybe a wobbly leg. So if you're the kind of guy that can follow a system, you've got a high likelihood of being successful as a franchise owner.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just a funny note on that. The first book is First Break All the Rules. The second book is Now Discover Your Strengths. And so it is kind of funny that you bring up that reference, because the first book is like, hey, go buck the system to a point. Now, if you read the book, it's not saying go tear down the rules. It's basically the thing is go break the rules and understand why they're the rules, right? So why are guidelines in place? Rather than feeling resentment towards guidelines, go find out why they are why they're there. And also in that process, you might find out that, some of those rules are not good for you. And that's important, because once you find out, hey, certain guidelines are not good for me, I don't want them on my life, then you can release those, but that actually gives you greater clarity. Once you find out, hey, what are your things that you don't like? What are your strengths? That gives you immense clarity going into a franchise system where you're saying, hey, look, this is what I'm not willing to deal with. I'm not willing to work nights and weekends. Okay, well, then you're probably out of the restaurant business. You're probably out of a lot of things, because if your manager doesn't show up, guess who's freaking working? You are. So okay, that's good. It's good to know what you will do and what you won't do. And those are important, as you say, self-aware traits or things to learn about yourself so that you can really launch into that. So
yeah, they say know thyself, Sam, know thyself.
Yeah, and that's a big statement. It's so these short phrases that are like, well, what does that mean? The fact is, you should probably ponder it and never stop searching. I was on a training this morning, and we watched it. So America's Got Talent is going on right now, and there's a gentleman on there named Zion. I forget his last name, but he has no bottom half of his body. He just has arms.
I saw that. I saw a preview of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, his story, but his kind of pitch to be on the show is like, look, I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you the feeling of what it's like and let you experience what it's like to no longer have any more excuses. And then he goes through his whole routine and he's doing all this crazy stuff. And then in the interview with Terry, he says, well, he's going through his life. And he says, I failed at wrestling. He lost because he became a champion wrestler with no body and just no legs, but just upper body. And he says he lost 200 matches in a row before he became successful. And so it's that same thing where it's like, are we really willing to defy odds? Are we really willing to get clear on what is our purpose? What are we going for? And be committed to that until we're successful without any exceptions. And it's really difficult to say, oh yeah, you're going to go through 200 rejections, 200 failures, but are you willing to go through the failures to get to the success? And a lot of people aren't. Hopefully this podcast inspires some people to be that person. That would be the objective. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. So you're the youngest of 10. Have any of your siblings ever decided to buy a franchise from you?
None of them have actually ended up moving forward, but there are several of them that are independent business owners. Like my second oldest brother, Craig, owned, until he retired a couple of years ago, used to own a car detailing business. And so I think part of it, Sam, is the fact that the Elsner clan probably aren't good at following rules. So I think we probably wouldn't make good franchise owners. I know that today, fortunately, I would never have to do this, but I wouldn't go back into work in corporate America, because to survive in corporate America today, you have to be able to not be your true authentic self. If in corporate America, if you're sitting in a meeting and there's something that is counter to your philosophy and you voice that, you're not going to be long for the world, pal. That's the nature of the beast. You have to be able to toe the line. The book, Selling the Invisible, he talks about in the book, he says, you know how to win in corporate America? You go back to 8th grade. It's a popularity contest. You've heard the term managing up. Yeah, that's what it's all about in corporate America. You have to manage up if you want to survive.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm not a very good rule follower either. So then my next question is, nobody's gotten into one, which is kind of what I assumed would be the case. But the flip side is being business owners, and I wonder how much of your experience is in this side of it as well, helping somebody franchise out their business. So rather than saying, okay, I'm selling franchises, I can sell franchises to like snow to an Eskimo, right? Because like it's a process of elimination. And if that's what they need, then wonderful. But right. when you have a business and maybe you want to take your business and blow it up, or maybe you just want to back off and you still want the profit from your business, but you don't want to be the actual one doing it all the time. If you just sell your business or instill a manager, sometimes that works. But if your company's not really big enough, then you are constantly maybe having to step in. But once you franchise out and you have multiple locations, then you can't possibly step into all of those roles. And so you have to rely on systems to do that. So the question is, do any of your siblings, have they ever considered franchising out their businesses so they don't have to follow somebody else's rules, but they get to make their own rules and then follow their own rules?
Yeah. So my one brother owned a delicatessen for probably, 10 years, and ended up selling it, and then became a very successful real estate agent. And so I don't think the thought ever was to franchise his deli, but he certainly could have done that. There are definitely people, and my brother Brad was the one. I mean, he's the Pied Piper. People love him and they follow him. They have got great respect for him. He's in the top 1% of all realtors. in St. Louis. And a lot of it has to do with his nature. He's a very likable, trustworthy guy. He's just one of those people, Sam, that you just like to hang around. And so I think that's the key to this whole thing is if you've got a business that is franchisable, it's certainly worth having a conversation with me because I've helped take independent business owners and convert them to a franchise. I've worked with several people in that space. Now, the reason that you can't be the chief cook and bottle washer of any business and expect to scale it up. You've got to have the systems and infrastructure. The book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but that's another one that to me is required reading for any business owner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when somebody is, because you used a phrase in that sentence that I think is maybe gets overlooked, but I want to draw it out and maybe dive into it a little bit. So a business that is franchisable. The one thing I've learned from interviewing franchise experts or like matchmakers or whatever they want to call themselves, right? I've learned that there's some just really random franchises out there that never in a million years would I have thought, oh, that's a franchise? Like cleaning? Like, why is there a cleaning franchise? Why did somebody choose to take like any hour cleaning? It's not that, but like a cleaning franchise and put it into 30 different cities and allow somebody to use their brand. Like, why would somebody choose that over just running their own company? It's just cleaning houses. It's not like there's like a certain system of cleaning houses. So when you say franchisable, how would you determine if you are an independent business owner? Maybe you've got one, maybe 2, 3 locations already. How would you know whether you're franchisable or not?
Yeah, great question. So there are thousands of franchises that are out there. I saw one the other day, Sam. It's like the AAA roadside assistance for boat owners. I'm like, this is a franchise, but you know what? Very successful model. So what you want to figure out if you've got a franchisable model is you first have a beta location. You have a corporate location, if you will, and you've figured out a way to provide systems and infrastructure that other people can turn around and follow. Now, you mentioned the cleaning franchise. Think about Molly Maid. Molly Maid is a household name in residential cleaning. Now, somebody might say, well, Patrick, I've got a bucket and a mop. Why do I need a franchise for that? Well, again, some people would prefer to do a business without a franchise. You know, you don't need McDonald's to open up a burger joint, Sam. What you want to be able to say is, am I better off partnering with a brand or am I better off doing something by myself?
Yeah, so there's the brand side of it. I think is a huge aspect of it. But I think also people underestimate, in my experience, having been a business owner, they underestimate the time it takes to establish relationships to get cost-effective goods. I'm trying to like structure this exactly what I'm saying. Like as Molly Maid or whatever, the Molly Maid Corporation probably can get cleaning, top of the line cleaning stuff, tools, solutions, all these things for a discounted rate because they're buying for a larger amount of people, and then they can sell them to the end consumer, the consumer of their franchise, which is the franchisee. They're selling them to their franchisee for cheaper than that franchisee could probably go buy them themselves. And so I think there's an overlooked element to that, along with having the systems and structures for back office system, knowing when to hire, when to fire, how to hire, how to fire, like all of those things. If you're new to the business owner world, those are all things that are like, oh man, how do I do this? How do I do this? Who's HR? Who's all these connections that generally is going to come in a manual and say, this is what you do. This is how you do it.
Yeah. So let's go back to advertising for a second.
Yeah.
When I started selling television advertising, there were 3 major networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS, and then you had PBS and then some independent channels. trying to navigate the advertising landscape today, good luck. It is an arduous process. You need a PhD to be able to figure out Google AdWords. So let's say I'm going to start that residential cleaning business. How do I know the first thing about clicks and Google AdWords and SEO and search engine optimization? This is the benefit. If I'm Molly Maid, I've got 2,000 franchise owners. Do you think I know how to find that residential cleaning customer? Of course. That's why you're paying the franchise fee. That franchise fee is giving you access to intellectual property. It's giving you access to the marks. When somebody says, oh, yeah, I've heard of Molly Maid, or yeah, I've heard of Long John Silver's. This is the benefit. If you're thinking about opening a cookie business, people are going to say, oh, I know Crumble Cookie. Of course, I love Crumble Cookie. I've never heard of Sam's Cookies, but I know Crumble Cookies and I know what to expect. And that's, again, there's no right reason or wrong reason to start a franchise. You have to look at things holistically and say, am I better off with a franchise or am I better off going on my own?
Sure. So just again, these are getting kind of detailed, but I have a sister right now who is, it's kind of developing, and I'll just share it because there's no reason not to. It's free advertising for her, and it's going to happen sooner or later. So my nephew ended up getting leukemia. He's like 2 years old. He's got leukemia. This type of leukemia apparently is something that, over 8 to 10 years, 99% of the people survive and have wonderful full lives after it. But it takes 8 to 9 years to do this, right? Well, before this, about a year and a half ago, she started a pancake business. Pancake batter, like making pancake batter, dry mix, and selling it at little stores and whatever. But she has a non-commercial license right now, which is like a hobby license, so she can make the stuff in her home. Well, now, because of the conditions of her son and other things, time restraints, she can't do that anymore. It's not feasible for her to continue to run her business the way she was running it before. And I'm like, well, podcasts is a great place to sell stuff, right? I mean, it's easy to get movement and all that. But the problem is you can only sell to where you live. And so that hones in your geographic region. And then maybe a podcast is not a good, effective place to market your product anymore. And other thing is, if you got 2,000 orders tomorrow, how are you going to fulfill on that? Right? Like now we've got all these structures that are like not in place. So we're working on changing her business into a commercial business so that we can help her get more exposure and visibility, which would then, I believe, with combining it with the story of why she started it in the first place, and the whole story of where she's at now, I think it has the potential to really blow up and become a pretty decent sized business.
Yeah, she should put it on Shark Tank.
she may be able to, at least get the exposure of it. The question is then, at what stage? So you brought up Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, which I love. Very good at segmenting, like, this is the responsibilities of each person in the business. Generally, how big or successful does a business need to be before it's worth looking at it as a franchise model? Or should every business that maybe isn't even inclined that way start from the beginning, building a potential of a franchise model, so they have that option?
Yeah, look at Orange Theory. They started in, I think, 2008, 2009. They started with a single location in Florida, and now they've grown to over 1,200 locations. But Orange Theory, I'm sure, didn't start off with the grandiose idea of they're going to be a worldwide fitness concept. It started off with probably the idea of, we wanted to get into fitness. The founder was passionate about fitness, and that's how it started. And then they recognized they had a franchisable model. But that's most businesses, the genesis oftentimes is the owner has an idea for a business there locally in their neighborhood. And then it just blossoms from there, and they recognize it. Look at Crumble Cookies, same situation there. Started in Utah, and now it's a worldwide brand. So it's not necessarily just because you have a business locally doesn't mean that it's an automatic that's going to be a franchise. That's definitely not the case. You just have to figure out in doing an analysis if it's a franchisable model.
So our franchises, again, I don't know the best way to ask this, but I'm thinking like service-based franchises, basic, or at least a franchise that has I don't know, like a location-based franchise. I don't know how to best say this, but there's like every franchise that I've heard of has either they're providing a service at somebody's home, like a handyman, cleaning, those types of things where you're bringing a system and applying it, or they have ultimately locations that you can buy and then build a location like a Crumble Cookie, whatever, either in a mall or somewhere, but it's still a location is the franchise. The cookies are not the franchise. Okay. So, but just since we're talking about this pancake business, right? Because that's something that's ultimately going to be made in a warehouse either way, because of the commercial standard of it. It's not something that they're selling cooked pancakes. They're selling pancake batter. Does that make sense to even consider the franchise model, or is a different business model probably better? Like maybe a drop shipping model, because you don't buy a franchise of drop shipping. You start so anyways, I'm just trying to understand, where does a franchise fit in to like network marketing, or just a straight up, I'm a business owner, I'm going to sell a ton of product, whatever it is.
So there are really two types of franchise models. You've got the retail brick and mortar, Sam, and then you've got the non-retail service business. And so each one of them, has a different role and a different path. So as you look at franchising, you think about Molly Maid, you're going to someone's residence, providing residential cleaning. And then you think about Crumble Cookie. Crumble Cookie is selling a product at a store. Now, you can also do service businesses like Molly Maid, but in a retail setting. Like, for instance, I'm going to go to Great Clips this weekend and get my hair cut. That is a service business, but in a retail setting.
Yeah. Well, that's good to have those separated that way, because I've been curious. I've been thinking a lot about like, what's the best way to get this business to blow up. And once it gets national, I think that podcasts are a big thing, but then that comes down to story, and that comes down to advertising. So let's go back to advertising, because I think that's the area that I'm most interested in as far as like the expertise here. By the way, anybody who's listening to this, if you want to go and see if you're right for a franchise, I mean, again, he didn't list off all of them, but he did tell you just the two broad categories of franchises. Where would they go to visit you, Patrick, and just like maybe take a questionnaire or start the process to see if they're a good fit?
Yeah. Best thing to do is go to my website. It's a really simple website. It's franinside.com. So FRAN inside.com.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say it doesn't hurt you to go check it out. If you're in corporate, if you have a job, and I was listening to a speaker at a conference last weekend, and he said, "Hey, raise your hand if you think you're paid for your time, like paid by the hour." And a bunch of people were like, "Yeah, there's people who get paid by the hour." And he's like, "There's nobody who gets paid by the hour, because if that was the case, we could all lay in our bed and sell our hours, and we would get paid for it." But no, nobody gets paid for the hour. We get paid based off the value we offer to the marketplace. And this guy, his name's Dan Clark, world-renowned speaker, speaks all over the world. But so we get paid for the value that we add to that hour to somebody else. And so it's the same thing. If you're working in corporate or you're working for yourself and you're like, man, I'm just not being compensated enough for the value that I'm adding. If you're a W-2 employee, I say this multiple times, I'll say it again, you are by definition underpaid. Because the moment you become overpaid, they fire you, because then they're losing money on you. Okay. So by definition, you're bringing in more value for that employer than you're being compensated for, by definition. Okay. They got to pay taxes, they got to pay a bunch of other stuff to get you your money. So if you feel like, I'm done being underpaid, I'm done being undervalued, I want to provide the same service, the same tactical skill, but I want to get paid better for it. I think franchising is at least worth a look, if not a great option, to do the same thing you're doing, do the same thing you're already passionate about, but just do it in a model that supports giving your family more money rather than somebody else's.
Yeah, I would say 75% of the people that I'm placing in franchising, Sam, keep their W-2 job and build a franchise on the side. So there's really three basic models. You can keep that job in corporate, continue to work for the man, build something on the side, or you could leave corporate, do something full time, or there's what are called passive investor models as well. So again, so much is predicated on the individual's goals.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm grateful for you sharing that, because I think that it's a crucial element for people to think through. Would I be right for it? Yeah, I think you'd be right for it. And you're going to be paid for the value that you're adding, not for the amount of time you're spending. And sometimes that in the beginning is a negative correlation, right? You're like, I'm giving way more time than I'm being compensated for. Yeah, most businesses, that's how they start. You give way more time than you're being compensated for. On the back end, though, you give way less time than you're being compensated for. And so time is a terrible way to determine whether or not you're getting paid enough, I think, in general.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I always tell people, no matter what the franchise is, it's going to come down to three questions. What's the investment? What's the return? And what do I have to put up with every day?
Yeah. And that's with anything. Franchise,
what else is there?
Spouse, children, all of it. That's everything. Hey, well, we're out of time here, but I'm just so grateful for you, Patrick, for coming on and sharing this. Please go see his website, franinsider.com. franinsider.com. So that is where you can go and just start your journey. See if it's right. It just doesn't cost anything to see if it's right or not, but if he can help you more self-actualize your future and have more time with your family, more time with your children, more time with your parents, more time with your spouse, and give you more freedom in life to do the things you're passionate about, why not at least take a look? And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not qualified, I'm not the right one, that's what everybody or almost everybody thinks until they find out the truth. And the truth may be that they're right, but a lot of people, they're probably wrong and they probably have it in them. And that's exactly what Patrick recognized in the beginning was, you know what? I'm at least as good as some of these other people out there, like I'm not any dumber than these guys. So I should be able to make this work. And so with that being said, thank you so much, Patrick, for coming on. Any last words before we sign off?
Yeah, look, the way we approach the franchise selection process and find out if you qualify is I have you fill out a questionnaire. I get you back on the phone. I do an interview. After that interview, we all decide if we want to continue on. If we want to continue on, I do my research and I present franchise options. There's no cost to work with me, just like an executive recruiter. If you join one of the brands I suggest, I'm paid like an executive recruiter. But after doing this for 20 years, I tell people, Sam, I'm not going to waste your time. There's no obligation. There's no contracts. So the only thing is an investment of time.
Sure. Yeah. And he has the best. I've interviewed quite a few people on my podcast, and it's not to say anything negative about any of them. So don't take that the wrong way, but he has the best, at least stated track record. I haven't met all 500 people, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have, but he has the best stated track record out of anybody that I've had on so far. And so I think it's at least worth a look and see where do you fit in to that world. So
yeah, I say look me up on LinkedIn, Patrick Elsner. You'll see all that information on LinkedIn. There's over 100 written testimonials on LinkedIn, and watch my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, and then make a decision from there.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, thanks a bunch, and we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.